Thank you for subscribing to So Beautiful magazine. I'm Martha Pullen, and I would like to share with you that we believe we have a wonderful subscriber video for you. Some of you have been subscribing since 1987, the year that we first published So Beautiful. Some of you perhaps are brand new subscribers, and we just love you all and everybody in between. Some of you have been subscribing since the first time you found out about it. But I'd just like to tell you we really do appreciate you, and this really is your magazine. I'm here on the set of Martha's Sewing Room. As many of you know, we produce a television series for public broadcasting stations all around the country. My partner in this venture is the University of Alabama, my alma mater. Actually, I started the University of Alabama in 1961 and got my PhD in 1977. Now, there was a little time in between there when I wasn't in school, I might add. I'm a third-generation educator, and good education is really important to me. Now, if we were out on the road, and I take my seminars literally all over the English-speaking world, I would tell you that I'm getting ready to do my dog and pony show. Now, I'm not out on the world, and I'm not doing a seminar here for you in person. However, I really am, via the magic of television and of videos. I think we have a really good program planned for you. What we'd like to start with today is a technique called, our little project called Little French Bonnet. And I'm going to go back and show you real briefly a few of the beginning techniques for French sewing. Then we're going to move into some lace shaping with Celtic lace shaping. I've asked my very dear friend Louise Baird to share with you some really great techniques on silk ribbon embroidery by machine, and she does it so beautifully. Then we have a really special technique called fancy squares. I bet some of you have never seen this technique before. We're going to do machine puffing, and we're going to take that puffing into circles with a new way of attaching it to the fabric. We're going to do machine entredot or hem stitching with gathered lace the easy way. I'm going to touch a base and kind of teach you a little bit about shadow applique, and we have a brand new technique called picture transfer. Now, if you'll travel along with me for the next hour, I think we'll have a really good time, and I'd like to start with Little French Bonnet. Little French Bonnet is one of the sweetest baby gifts you can make for a baby girl. Let me share with you that we are going to use all of our beginning French sewing techniques on this bonnet. The pretty little ruffle, entredot, Swiss insertion, lace, and the back of the bonnet is absolutely precious too. And you know what it is? Let me untie it for you and just show you how easy this little bonnet is to make. That is a casing, and when I untie it and put it flat, you can see that it's really just a straight strip of fabric with a ruffle and a casing that forms a really beautiful gift. The beginning techniques used are lace to lace, zigzag together. Entredot to fabric, in this case it's Swiss insertion, entredot to fabric over here, and the two laces butted together and zigzagged. The ruffle has the lace attached with Martha's Magic, and then here is a long strip. I'm going to ask you just to see what I've done here. I've made a long strip, and actually I can slice that into 3 pieces and have the materials for 3 little French bonnets. Here it is all put together in hot pink thread, which is not exactly the thread I would use for this beautiful white bonnet, but you can see what techniques I've used there. Now come along with me to the sewing machine, and I would like to share with you one of these really easy techniques, or rather 2 of these really easy techniques. The first technique is Martha's Magic. I have left about 1/4 or 1/8, either one, of an inch of fabric exposed. The heading of the lace, and by the way, these are right sides to right sides, the heading of the lace is over about anywhere from 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to zigzag, covering the heading of the lace. Now I'm going to need to make that a little bit wider. I'm going to take it up to about 5 on the width, and the length is anywhere from 1/2 to 1. I'm going to zigzag going, now let me stop here and just share with you, over the heading of the lace and all the way off the fabric. Now what's going to happen to that extra little fabric piece? It's going to roll into the heading of the lace, and it makes it very, very strong. Now, why do I not, well, wait a minute, let me just sew this just a minute so I can show you. And then I'm going to stop and show you what I have here. All right, I have stitched zigzagging over the heading of the lace and off the edge. Now then, why did I not just put, now this is what I used to think when I first started working on these techniques. Why didn't I just put the edge of the fabric and the edge of the lace together in zigzag? Well, it's real easy to tell you why. They will come apart, and we don't want that. So therefore, for the technique that I really love, I move it over and I zigzag, and it makes a beautiful rolled hem edge. Now, the next technique I'd like to share with you is entre-deux to flat fabric. And I always tell my students, it's a little like putting a waistband on a skirt. And I bet some of you remember the 50s, and that was when I had high school home ec, and I just loved making those full skirts. Well, you probably remember putting those waistbands on too. And of course, you also can put them on contemporary clothes. All right, I'm going to put the entre-deux down on the edge of the fabric, lining up the seam allowance of the entre-deux with the edge of the fabric. And let me get a straight stitch. I'm going to straight stitch, let me move over just a little bit, hang on just a minute, in the ditch of the entre-deux. This is called stitch in the ditch. It's pretty easy, isn't it? Now then, I'm going to, you see there, stitch in the ditch. Now I'm going to trim away half of that seam allowance. Half of that seam allowance, getting it down to, anywhere around a quarter, depends on how long you made it to begin with. And then I will set my machine on zigzag, and I will zigzag, make it about a 4 or maybe a 3.5 and a 1.5. I will zigzag going off of the edge of the seam allowance and over to the edge of the entre-deux. And once again, that will finish off that edge. Now, I do not zigzag into the entre-deux holes at all. I only go off the edge and over to the edge of the entre-deux. Now, let me open it up and show you what a beautiful finish that is. The entre-deux and the Swiss batiste, that makes a beautiful finish, and I do not cover up any of the holes of that expensive entre-deux. And next, we're going to go to Celtic lace shaping. Celtic lace shaping is such a beautiful technique, which really just involves two techniques, curving and mitering lace. Let me just share with you what Celtic lace shaping is. On this beautiful lady's blouse, the Celtic design is the one in the middle. Now notice here in this little corner right here, do you see how some of the design goes over and then it goes under and over and under and under? You see, that's what makes Celtic so pretty. Now on this beautiful christening dress out of our Grandmother's Hope Chest book, the design is not really Celtic on the bottom, but it really is the Celtic technique. So if you'll come down here and look at this beautiful shape, you can see that the laces go over and under and over and under and down even on the skirt. Some of the laces go over and under like the Celtic technique. The little doll dress has Celtic technique both at the top with the little loops on her on the top of the dress, and then there's another Celtic design down at the bottom that goes over and under and over and under. I also have a beautiful pillow that is Celtic in nature. It has the loops that go over and under, and I'm going to show you the real trick to zigzagging those loops so it will truly look like Celtic lace shaping. All right, let's see how you do Celtic lace shaping. I'm going to put these garments right over here. Now the first Celtic lace shape I have for you, and by the way, I've traced it off on a piece of paper. You can see it goes over and under. Now, come over here with me. I'm going to stick the pins in the outside of the lace. You know, that's how you curve lace. And I'm going to pull a thread to make it lay down. Do you notice how some of the lace comes under and then it comes over? On this center piece right here, some of the laces went over and then some of them are going to come under. I'll come in here and pin the curves and then pull the string to make it lay down. Over here, I have finished that Celtic lace pattern, and it is absolutely beautiful when it's cut away. You can see how this half of the Celtic lace is cut away, and in a few few minutes I'm going to show you how you zigzag it in order to make it really look like it went over and under. That really is probably the hardest part of Celtic lace shaping, but I'm going to show you how to do all of that. Now this is another Celtic lace shaping design which is perfectly beautiful also. Let's see what it consists of. It consists of a little square that goes over, then mitered, then under, then mitered, then over, then mitered, then under. Now there are some curves in this Celtic pattern. The curves go over the square, under the other curve, over the square and around, over the square, under the curve, over the square and around. Now this is a nice little pattern that goes right along with it. The miters, the miters, the miters, and around. Let's look a little more carefully at how that design is made. First of all, you trace off your design on your fabric. Then I'm going to put the pins on the large side of the curve. I will pull a string to make it lay down. Pins on the large side, pull a string, and on across. That makes the first section. Now the second section is another section of curves. So I'll put the pins in and then go over, and remember I'm going to pull the strings, pull the threads in here to make it lay down. Here is where the fun part comes in, where we start weaving. All right, this one is already woven. Now you see on this little square, I've brought it up. So I'll put a pin on the outside, a pin on the inside, a pin on the outside, fold it down, remove the inside pin, and now then, since that one went under, this one will come over. It goes over and under and over and under. All right, now then, look on this one. Everything is all shaped. I'm ready to cut off the little tails right there. This is the hard part of Celtic lace shaping, but you're going to know all about it. How do you zigzag it? All right, now watch. I'm going to zigzag. This is the lace that goes underneath. Are you with me? So I will zigzag until I get to the point where lace crosses over it. Then I will just jump over. I do not zigzag over it. I will zigzag now. This time I go ahead and zigzag right across. You know why? This piece of lace is on top. So I'll zigzag over here. Now, the reason I did not zigzag over that piece is that that piece is on top. So I'm going to jump over, zigzag all the way around here. Now look, do you see that this piece of lace is on top? So I'm not going to zigzag there. I'm going to jump over and zigzag. Now this piece of lace is the top piece, so I'm going to go ahead and zigzag. Now I've got something on top of it here, so I do not zigzag there. I just jump over and zigzag around. And that is the real secret to Celtic lace shaping, is stitching through the double laces at the intersections only if your lace is on top. Now I'm going to have a very special guest for this So Beautiful video. Louise Baird will teach you a wonderful lesson on silk ribbon embroidery by machine. A lot of you So Beautiful subscribers know, that is if you've looked at my traveling schedule in the magazine, that I travel somewhere wonderful nearly every week. You know, one of the most often asked questions is, Martha, how do you do that silk ribbon embroidery on the machine? You know, I just love to do machine work and I don't like to do handwork. Well, I'll tell you what, I think that that is a question that needs to be answered, and in just a few minutes, Louise Baird is going to answer that question for you, as only Louise can do. Here is the first example I have of a magnificent picture that has been done by silk ribbon, don't tell anybody, by machine. Look at these stitches. They are perfectly magnificent, and unless you got a magnifying glass, you would never know that this was not silk ribbon by hand. It is just beautiful. I have another picture here, perfectly beautiful picture. I want you to look at the quality once again, just right down on this. Is that gorgeous or what? The flowers just puff up exactly like you had done it by hand, and it was all done by machine. I like to do quick and easy things, and I bet a lot of you do too. This is a towel, a purchased tea towel, and this is a bee that has been simply monogrammed on with one of the big monograms in the sewing machine. Now these two little roses are silk ribbon by machine, but don't tell anybody because it looks for the world as if this is silk ribbon by hand. By the way, this whole monogram, roses and all, took less than 20 minutes. I have another purchased garment that has been embellished, this beautiful Battenberg vest. Now, if you can look at this with me. The green leaves, which are done in a variegated thread, are perfectly beautiful. Those are built-in leaves, built-in stitches on the sewing machine. It goes all the way around. Now look at this magnificent silk ribbon embroidery by machine. You see that little flower with those little loops on it, and then moving on down with some more loopy flowers? This is perfectly beautiful, and I don't think too many people would be able to tell that if this were not done by machine. Now then, I have my very dear friend Louise Baird that I have invited to come show you everything there is to know just about silk ribbon by machine. By the way, I consider Louise to be the finest sewing machine artist in the United States today. Now I'm going to ask Louise just to show you the magic tricks and just really unravel this mystery for you.
This is an example of one of the pictures that Martha just showed, and it has lots of different silk ribbon done by machine. And a couple of the things that I'll show you is this loop is just a looped flower, and the stems, they're twisted. You can also do some French knots. And most of the time, whenever I do free motion silk ribbon, I have a little play piece that I work with to practice out the flowers that I'm going to do to begin with. So to start with this, you generally have, using the YLI ribbons, silk ribbons, there's a 7mm, a 4mm, and a 2mm, and the different width ribbons will give you different looks in your flowers. Okay, the next thing to consider is that you need to place your fabric in a hoop when you work. Now, when you do this by hand, generally, this is the right side of your work. But when you do it by machine, this is the wrong side, and the right side is up. You want it this way so that the flat part is on the bed of the machine so that it'll stitch. Okay, the next thing that you want to consider is what kind of thread to use. And most of the time I use an invisible nylon transparent thread in the top, and you can use the invisible thread in the bobbin if you want, or just a color to match your base fabric. It really is up to you. The next thing you should do in machine setup is to lower your feed dogs and take the foot off of your machine. Depending on the machine that you use, you may also need to take the ankle of the machine off. On this machine, it has a middle position that is used for free motion work, so that's where I'll have it this time. If the foot is not down or in the middle position, you will have no tension on your top thread, and you'll get a little wad of thread on the wrong side. So I'm going to first, to begin with, to do the rows, I have done 3 dots here, and I am going to tie on my stitches. My foot is down, and tie on my stitches. If your machine has a needle down button, you can go ahead and use your needle down button. I'm going to take a piece of the 7mm ribbon, wrap it around the needle, and anchor it about midpoint. So I'm just going to anchor it down. And now I'm going to travel to the next dot, turn my hoop just a tad, and again I will twist it. Now if you twist it and pull it taut, you're going to have a very flat rose, but if you leave it loose, it'll give you a much more fluffy rose. So just tack this one down, then move it out of the way and go to the next dot. Turn your hoop again, twist the ribbon, lay it just gently, loosely there, and stitch. Get that ribbon out of the way. And now this time, so that you don't have a square rose, you want to stop in between the one that you've done before, or not at exactly the same spots as you did before. Twist it again. And you can do this until you get the rose the size that you want it to be. In a minute I'll show you how to finish the tails, but for right now I'm just going to clip them relatively close so they'll be out of the way. Now to do the stem stitch, you can use an embroidery floss if you'd like, but since we're doing silk ribbon by machine, I will use a 4mm silk ribbon to do the stem. You can start with about an 18-inch piece or whatever you're comfortable with, and anchor your thread down. Remember, I'm going to get rid of those tails a little bit later. I'm going to pull my thread around the needle, anchor it down. Now again, I want to twist it, but I'm going to move the hoop a little bit. And remember that since this is free motion work, I am moving the hoop. The feed dogs and the foot are not in any play right now. You have to move the hoop or it's not going to go anywhere. Move it down about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. Twist the ribbon, and again I like to leave it kind of loose, and it makes a little bit thicker stem. Twist it and stitch. If you want your stem to be much thinner, then just hold the ribbon tighter and make shorter stitches as you go. To make a leaf, which is the same as like a lazy daisy, if I put a leaf right along the side here, and I just drew it in to show you, move your ribbon out of the way, stitch until you get to the top of the leaf. You can use this shish kebab that Martha likes so much to kind of hold it and position it in place, stitch over the top of it, and you can even, if you want to, make a little knot by twisting, or rather not twisting, but just carrying the thread ribbon around the needle, stitching again, and then coming down to where you began. And now you tack this one down by twisting it. Okay. So this is like a lazy daisy stitch here. Okay, another fun stitch to do is that loop stitch, and I'm just going to stitch on over here right now so that I'm in a new place. This time, instead of having the double ribbon, just tack your ribbon down toward the end and clip it close to the edge. Whoops, I'm having a little trouble here. There. And now with the shish kebab stick, make a loop, hold it down, stitch over it. And every time, just turn it just a little bit, and the number of loops you make will help to determine how full your flower will be. And let me do just a few more of them. Okay, you can see how that would be if you go all the way around in a circle, how it would be such a nice fluffy little flower. Okay, and now another stitch, and again I'm just moving on down so that I'll have space, is like a French knot. And with a narrow thread, like the 4mm thread, again, just stitch it down toward the bottom and then lift your needle till it's almost out of the fabric, but not completely. Trim the edge, and now just twist the hoop. And by twisting the hoop, it makes the ribbon go around the end of the needle, and you can go around as many as 3 times or 6 times, depending on how big you want your French knot to be. Now pull your ribbon down close to the bottom, and again you can make it tight or loosen it up. And I usually hold it with the shish kebab stick or my fingernail, pull the needle out of the fabric, and then stitch into, and that's a French knot. This would be a neat looking thing to put in the middle of one of the loop flowers. Now, to make a French knot that's not really a French knot, to really make it into a flower like this is a rolled stitch. It's using the 7mm ribbon, and making it like a French knot, but instead of stitching back in the same spot, which you've done, what you need to do is to turn it and stitch it a little bit away from where you had the needle to begin with. And again, I'm just going about 5 or 6 times. It really doesn't matter how many times you go, depends on how full you want your flower to be. I'm kind of loosening it up. I'm going to pull the needle out of the fabric with my hand, and now instead of stitching it back in the same place, I'm going to move it over. And can you see how that just helps it to lay down? And then stitch across the bottom of it. And you would continue to do this in as many times as you want to create the flower the size that you want. Okay, now I'm going to show you a little bit about placing it in the bobbin of your machine and doing bobbin work. Now I think a lot of us have been doing this for quite some time, and when you do this you need to place your silk ribbon on the bobbin. This is a sample of a book cover that was done with the decorative stitches right side down. All of the decorative stitches were on the wrong side, or the right side of the fabric, but the fabric was placed the wrong side, right side down. Okay, this time you want to use an applique foot, and your feed dogs are up, and you want to wind your silk ribbon on the bobbin. Now when I wind my silk ribbon on the bobbin, you can actually do it through the bobbin winding mechanism of your machine by just threading it up through the hole in your bobbin and holding it gently and turning. And when you fill up the bobbin, you want to be sure that the thread is kept flat so that it's not curled up in your bobbin, and so that it'll be flat in the work that you do. Okay, now I'm just going to take this bobbin and place it in. Now I have loosened my bobbin tension on this so that the silk ribbon can flow easily. I don't generally change the tension of the regular sewing bobbin, so on the machines that I have, I will generally have an extra bobbin case so that that's the one that I play with as much as I want to, and it won't make a difference when I do regular sewing. Now I took one stitch and my bobbin comes to the top, and make sure that it flows relatively easy, and put it to the back of the sewing machine. When you choose the stitches that you work with, you want a relatively open stitch. You don't want a stitch that goes backwards and forwards a lot of times. Side to side satin stitches look great, but you may need to open up the stitch length some so that it's not so compact and so tight. Place it up underneath your needle with the right side down. I know this is white fabric and it doesn't have a real right and wrong side, but your right side would be down, and I will just choose a stitch here, 65, and I will change my length. Remember I said your length needs to be kind of long so that it doesn't get bogged down so easily, and then you need to sew slowly because the bobbin, since it has the silk ribbon in it, it needs to be able to travel across without making a knot in it. I'm just going to do 1 or 2 little patterns here. And then when you take it out from your machine, most of the time I'll hold the back of it so that it won't pull out. And you can see how it's created the design on the stitch. Now remember in the beginning I told you I'll show you how to pull the thread to the back of your work, or pull the silk ribbon to the back of your work. Most of the time, if you will take your ribbon and trim it where it's fairly close, like this one is. And then this little tool is called a snag nabbit. It's like a needle on the end, and there's a little feel on this end. If you can just take the needle end of it, push it into where you want it to go, and then pull it to the wrong side. And as you pull it to the wrong side, twist it a little bit, and it will just go to the back side of your work, I think. There. It's all to the back side. Okay, now Martha has an heirloom technique for you called fancy squares.
Fancy squares is a very easy technique. I'd like to share with you exactly what it is. This beautiful little white dress that has bows across the high yoke has fancy squares. This is what I'm talking about when I say fancy squares. Has fancy squares that comes down this piece down the front and then just a traditional fancy band. I have a precious little pink dress to show you where fancy squares can be used also. In this case, you see those cute little double needle Pintucks up here. The fancy squares are used across the bodice of the dress, and then the skirt is just a plain little skirt with a little lace fancy band on the bottom. Now I know a lot of you love to make the christening dresses, and I do too. This one has the fancy squares in several different places. The fancy squares run across the bodice, and then coming down the front of the dress are just some beautiful tucks. Those are folded tucks, not pin tucks. Okay, you're going to love this. Machine embroidered embroidery, the fancy squares in the middle here, and then some more machine embroidery and the fancy squares. And you know what? The embroidery inside each one of these fancy squares is machine embroidered also, and then beautiful scallops on the bottom of this dress. I have another dress that is for an older girl, which has, again, machine embroidered fancy squares right here at the top, and then coming down to the skirt, machine embroidery, and here are the fancy squares with machine embroidery, more machine embroidery on the band, and more fancy squares, coming down to the bottom with the beautiful big scallops, of course made on the sewing machine, and the gathered lace attached. Now here is all there is to making these fancy squares. You remember the little French bonnet techniques we used a few minutes ago? Use those same techniques and attach, say, 3 pieces of insertion, entredot, Swiss insertion, entredot. Here it is when you have your insertion attached. Now I've attached the entredot there, and I'm going to butt these over and zigzag them together. And here is what my long piece looks like when I finish it. Now do you see these lines I've drawn here, across here and across here? I'm going to take my scissors and cut these apart. Now after you do that, come down and turn them in a different direction. These little pieces I cut apart, I now have spaced this way, and this way, and after I put them together, they look like this. All the way across, you see I have fancy squares now. At the top of this fancy square, I have put insertion and entredot at the top of that. If you look right here, it shows you what I put on this row up here. Entredot, insertion, and entredot. And this one is done all in the proper color of thread. If you can look right here, you will see how beautiful fancy squares are. In other words, you create another piece of fabric. Here was the original piece, and it was all in one long strip. We cut it apart and then added a top and a bottom. Once again, let me show you how that looks when you get it in the dress. You cut them apart, add a top and a bottom, and you talk about beautiful and elegant garments. Next, I have puffing circles for you. I have a really interesting technique to share with you today, making curve puffing. Now, this little dress, as you can see, that has the curve puffing at the waistline, which is really precious, and it has curve puffing on the skirt. See how it makes a little loop there, a little curly-Q loop, and both of the pieces of lace curve around also. Now, this blouse is one of my most beautiful blouses in the whole world. The pattern for this is in Heirloom Sewing for Women, size 2 to 24, I might add. Let me turn this blouse collar around. I think that's one of the most beautiful blouses that I've ever seen. Do you see the curve puffing that comes up and around and what we would call candle flame puffing? How pretty that is, and this is such an easy trick to do, and I really think everyone thinks it's very difficult to do. All right, this is what we're going to end up with, a curved puffing circle with the puffing in the middle and lace on either side. Here is a little pillow using that technique. The lace on either side, the curved puffing attached with wing needle entredeaux, and then the lace in the center. First of all, let me share with you how you're going to make puffing. I like to use a gathering foot. You lower your gathering foot and you're going to straight stitch along. Now run your fabric all the way underneath the gathering foot. There's a little slit in there, but you don't want to run it through that little slit. You simply run it all the way underneath the gathering foot, and you just puff and puff and puff and puff, and it makes perfect puffing every time. You go down one side and then you go down the other side, and let me tell you, this really makes puffing easy. All right, now I'm going to show you how pretty and how evenly that puffing is gathered. Now, I'm going to remove the gathering foot. I'm not going to sew on the other side. Let me remove the gathering foot and just put on my regular sewing foot here. Now then, I have already done the curved puffing, the gathering on both sides of this pretty piece of puffing. And this is the easy trick I want to share with you. A long time ago, I taught everybody that you had to go to the fabric board and stick your pins all the way in and then remove it. Well, let me share with you that we have an easier way of attaching this curved puffing. You don't have to go to the fabric board at all. Draw a circle on your piece of fabric. Then just take your curved puffing. I had a pin right there. Gosh, I almost put that pin in my mouth. That wasn't smart, was it? Then straight stitching, and you do not have to use stabilizer if you're just straight stitching. So we're going to straight stitch. Let me get it right on that line. I'm not going to pin anything. I'm not going to hold anything. Or I'm going to hold it. I'm not going to pre-pin anything. Now I'm going to straight stitch right along the line where my puffing gathers are. And I'm going to lift it up and see where my line is and simply hold my finger down there. And I'm going to straight stitch along there just a little bit more. Then I'm going to hold it up and see where that line goes again. And I'm going to straight stitch a little bit more. And then I'll hold it up again. And actually, you can get to where you go pretty fast with this. I'm going to hold it up again. And I can sew one side of this puffing down without any pre-pinning or anything. I can go all the way around that circle. Now, I'm not going to stitch the whole thing. Let me show you. I've already done it over here. All right, I've stitched down on this side. And now, after you stitch the puffing down, it kind of sticks up a little bit. Watch what you do to make that lay down perfectly. Just take your hand and go boink, 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 and looky there, it lays down perfectly. Now when I'm going to make this circular puffing and stitch it down all the way around, I have a little bit too much left over down here at the end, so I can do one of two things. I can just trim a little bit of it off, or I could tuck the whole thing under, and then I tuck it under like this, and I pretend that it's all stitched together there, although you don't need to stitch it together there at all. And then I'm going to shape my lace around there, and then take it off the fabric board. I will need to use my fabric board to shape the circular lace. I will pin it, take it off the fabric board, and then sew the whole thing down. And that is how easy it is to use the new and easy way for stitching puffing down without even pinning it first. And now then, I have a wonderful lesson for you on hem stitching and gathered lace. This technique is called hem stitching and gathered lace. Now, let me just share with you exactly what that looks like. On this beautiful little doll dress, if you'll look down here on her skirt, you can see that the gathered lace was attached with the wing needle entredeaux or hem stitching. And then on the bottom of this scallop skirt, it was once again attached with the wing needle entredeaux and gathered lace. Now then, here's another beautiful collar which has silk ribbon embroidery on it, and the gathered lace is attached with the hem stitching, and it really makes it easy if you can do two things at one time. This is another beautiful blouse that Patti Smith designed for So Beautiful magazine on our back to school issue. you can see that this hem stitching attaches the lace, and this hem stitching right here attaches the gathered lace. That's what we're going to be doing. Now this beautiful blouse, which is also out of a back issue of So Beautiful magazine, I think this, not blouse, excuse me, nightgown. This was in the 3rd magazine we ever put out. I think it's January 1988. This has hem stitching that attaches the gathered lace, and then here's hem stitching which attaches the lace to the curved puffing on that beautiful nightgown. Now let me show you a trick on how to do this. All right, I'm using a stabilizer which is called Stitch and Ditch. It is a wonderful stabilizer. It's only $4 a roll, and it comes in 3-inch widths and 8-inch widths. I just sliced off a little bit. It isn't too long. I didn't have to get out a big yard or something and cut it, and it is a wonderful stabilizer. Now I'm using my entre-deux stitch. Let me show you an easy trick. Notice I do not have any gathers here. That is not gathered lace, and I want gathered lace. All right, I'm going to come out here, pull one of the gathering threads in my lace, and let me let you look at this real carefully. When I pull the gathering threads, there's one part of this loop that is toward my sewing machine. Let me untwist it here. There we go. Okay. One part is closer to the sewing machine, one part is away from the sewing machine. I'm going to pull the part that is closer to the sewing machine and simply slip some gathers up. Remember, I've already made 2 or 3 stitches now with the wing needle entre-deux stitches. Now I'm going to push some gathers up, and don't worry if they're not even, you can't get them even anyway. I have my stitch and ditch underneath here, and I'm going to do my wing needle. Now, I use this shish kebab stick, so if I sew over it, it won't hurt my sewing machine. Now then, I'm going to do wing needle entre-deux, wing needle entre-deux, and then I'll stop and distribute these gathers just a little bit. That looks good to me. Then I'll do wing needle entre-deux, and you know what? I'm stitching in my hem stitching. At the same time, I am attaching my gathered lace. Now I'll scoot these gathers out just a little bit more. I'll play with them just a little bit and hold it with my wooden shish kebab stick that I buy at the grocery store. Now then, I'm going to wing needle entre-deux, wing needle entre-deux, wing needle entre-deux. Now I ran out of gathers, so what am I going to do? I'm going to come out another 6 or 8 inches, and I'm going to pull another gathering thread on my lace. I usually try to get the top one, and once again I open this up and I push the gathers. I pull the part that's closest to the sewing machine, and I'm once again going to push the gathers underneath the sewing machine, take my wooden shish kebab stick, push it underneath there, and I'm going to wing needle entre-deux, wing needle entre-deux, attaching some gathers. Now I think you get the idea, and that way you don't have to gather all the gathers. Let me just show you how beautiful this is. Do you see how the entre-deux stitch has attached the gathered lace, and yet I didn't have to gather it at all before I started sewing. I just pulled those gathers in as I was sewing. And now I have a wonderful lesson for you on shadow applique. First, for shadow applique, I would like to show you our magnificent quilt that is the quilt from our 500 show guide from Martha's Sewing Room called Sewing Inspirations from Yesteryear. I just love that big basket in the middle and the butterflies, and this quilt is really spectacular, and you can make it in any size you want to. Now then, I would like to share with you how pretty shadow applique is on a blouse. The dogwood and the leaves and the little French knots in the center. This is a little dress that also comes from our 500 show guide from Martha's Sewing Room, and this has the little butterflies on this collar, and the little dress for that book is the little high-waisted dress, this time done with butterflies. This is a really beautiful pillow that really we took the designs off of the quilt. The iris and the flowers and the butterfly. I want to show you some stitches from that in just a few minutes. Okay, let's get started. When you look at colors for shadow applique, you need bright colors. Do you see how bright these colors are? And see how pretty they show through the fabric? Now look at this black color here, or rather a dark gray. It's kind of muddy, and believe me, it shows through muddy. The bright colors really are better. First of all, you take your pattern and transfer it to a thin fabric. So I've drawn the butterfly off. Now the first part I'm going to shadow applique is the black body on the butterfly. So, well actually it's dark gray. I put a piece of dark gray fabric behind, I go to the top, and I'm going to tiny zigzag all the way around that body. I've done that here in red thread. Now I would normally use a dark gray thread, not red, but I've zigzagged all around. After I zigzag it down, I come back and I trim away the fabric from around the stitching. That is step number one, and you do that for each one of these shapes. Now, I've got one over here, part of that butterfly also, and I've got a piece of peach fabric underneath it because I'm going to make a peach little dot on that butterfly. I'm going to slowly, slowly zigzag around the line I have drawn. Now, when I come to a curve, I'm going to need to move my presser foot and come around a little bit more. That was a pretty abrupt curve there, so I am going to need to move my presser foot, and then I'm going to follow the lines, and that's absolutely all there is to shadow applique. You simply follow the lines and then go behind and cut the fabric. Here is a darling way to use shadow applique and a little picture card to send a gift to a friend. These are available at most sewing and craft stores. Let's look at that butterfly pillow that we saw just a few minutes ago. First of all, I have my design and I transfer it onto a piece of sheer fabric. In this case, I have white fabric. White, I think, is the prettiest. Then I work one step at a time. I'm going to make the iris, so I will put the purple fabric behind here and I will zigzag all the way around it. When I'm finished, I will come back and trim away the purple fabric. All right, I've already done the yellow part of the iris. See, it's already been trimmed on the back. And these leaves right here have already been stitched and trimmed. And after it is finished, it's ready to go on the pillow. This is how it will look on the front. This is how it will look on the back. And that's all there is to doing shadow applique. Next, I have a really neat technique for picture transfer. It is so much fun to be able to transfer antique valentines, pictures, postcards, and photographs to fabric. This little doll pinafore is the pinafore from our 600 series of Martha's Sewing Room, and we've transferred a little antique valentine, one of my collection, into this little oval. Another little garment from the 600 collection is this precious pinafore, and on this particular version, we've transferred the antique valentines in different sections of the skirt. Another one of my favorite projects is this pillow that has the lace heart, one of my collection valentines in the middle, and some silk ribbon embroidery right here. I'd like to share with you the fabrics that work well, or these are just some of the ones that work well. The silk dupioni, the Swiss batiste, the silk batiste, and handkerchief linen or else other types of linen work really well. This sheet is a sheet that we have available from Martha Pulling Company on very high quality paper that's ready to cut out and transfer to any fabric you would like. So you see, you really do get a lot on one sheet. Now I've already transferred the, I've already put the 10 to 12 seconds of heat on this one, and I'm going to just heat it up just a little bit so it will come off again. You do have to have it hot when you take it off. I do think it's a good idea to put pressure on this, and it's already had 10 to 12 seconds, so let me not burn my fingers here because it's a little bit hot, and that was a hot iron. Hang on just a minute, let me cool it off, and let me pull this. And by the way, if part of it starts not to pull off real well, just stop and heat it up again. However, this valentine is pulling off beautifully. Now if I see that a little bit of it's pulling away, I'll just put a little bit more heat on it. But guess what? Aha! It just pulled off perfectly. Now isn't that pretty? The little antique valentine is on that fabric. That is the end of our instructional part of this video. We have a very short overview of some other products and books and wonderful things that are available from Martha Pulling Company for the next few minutes. But if you just wanted to see the instructional video, I'll take this time right now to say thank you again so very, very much for subscribing to So Beautiful magazine, and may God bless each one of you. I'd like to give you a personal guided tour through some of the products that we have at Martha Pullen Company. First of all, this what I'm wearing is called a posture pleaser. And let me turn around and show you the back. It really does help relieve, for me anyway, it helps relieve stress when I'm sewing or smocking. One of the products that I'm so fond of is this June Taylor Heirloom Stitching Shape and Press board. You don't even have to draw on your dress, you just pin right through this board. And on this side is a portrait collar or a bishop guide. You know what? We have some beautiful soft cover books. We have Martha's favorite applique, Madame Alexander 14-inch Victorian doll patterns, and they fit other dolls, not just Madame Alexander. The Joy of Smocking, a complete guide to learning how to smock. French Hand Sewing by Machine, the second book. Shadow Work, the easy way. And Barely Beginning Smocking with lots of patterns for bare clothes. Our other books are Martha's Sewing Room. I think it's over 300 pages. I can't quite remember all the page numbers, but it went along with our first television show, and all of our show guides are loaded with patterns. They all have at least 12 doll dress patterns in them that fit 13 different sizes of Seeley's bodies. Secondly, Victorian Sewing and Crafts, a really wonderful book with lots of patterns. I might add, as far as the doll dresses fitting just the Seeley's bodies, they also fit nearly every doll from, I think it's about 12 inches up to about 20 inches. Next, we have Martha's Heirloom Magic, the show guide that goes along with the 300 series. You step over here. Then we have Martha's Attic, the show guide for the 400 series. While I'm over here, I might just show you the needles for heirloom sewing, hand sewing needles, a complete assortment and absolutely a lovely gift, and the heirloom tissue paper that is really wonderful for storing your heirlooms. Now here is a little assortment of wonderful things. The YLI silk threads for silk ribbon embroidery, we carry all of the colors. We also carry those hard to find buttons for heirloom sewing and pearl buttons, including those teeny ones for the backs of little bitty babies' dresses, as well as the round ones that match for the little boy's suit, the back of the suit and the little buttons at the waist. We also have white and ecru in the magnificent 80-weight Madeira thread, absolutely the most beautiful thread for heirloom sewing. Let me move on over a little bit. We next have Silk Ribbon Treasures, our new best-selling book that talks all about silk ribbon smocking and embroidery, and the pattern has been one to die for. Then there's our ever-popular Grandmother's Hope Chest, along with the pattern. You know, people have told me that they think there's about $400 of patterns in the pattern envelope alone, everything you would want to dress a baby. Then Heirloom Sewing for Women with its pattern envelope with all of the women's blouse patterns, and they run, I might add, size 2 to size 24. Now I'm just going to walk around here a little bit, and you can get to see my posture perfect a little bit better too, to show you some more products. Some of you know that we have a large selection of French and English laces. Absolutely beautiful laces. Right behind this is a binder that says So Beautiful, and it's for you to store a whole year of So Beautiful magazines. We have wonderful videos. All of our Martha's Sewing Room television series is available on video, and I'm telling you, people have raved about getting these professional quality videos. We also have some other videos. The former So Beautiful videos, the subscriber videos, which are wonderful 1-hour teaching videos, are available also. Fabrics, you have long loved our Nalona. It is the finest quality Swiss batiste. We have a rainbow of colors here, several colors of blue, lavender, peach, pink, white, bridal white, and talk about a rainbow of colors. We have a huge rainbow of silk dupioni, one of my very favorite fabrics. You know, in Australia several years ago when I was down there, it seems that all of the really elegant bridal clothes were made out of silk dupioni. I just fell in love with it, and let me tell you, it is beautiful, and I love it with silk ribbon embroidery. Now, I bet some of you were thinking, well, what does she have that's brand new that we don't know about yet? I'm going to share it with you. Well, I better go over here first. This is a product, the very first time anyone has seen Dr. Joe's pleater. Now, maybe you're wondering who Dr. Joe is. Well, that's my husband, Dr. Joe Pullen, who has been working with this pleater, and I've helped him with the design of it. It is made in the USA. A heavy pleater, 24 rows, pure brass, and it has half spaces all the way across. Heavy so it will not slip around when you're pleating, and it has the thread holders, the bobbins, you just fill your bobbins and put them on here so you always have your threads ready. It also has half spaces, so there are a total of 48 spaces on that pleater, and its own little screwdriver and nice box and all of that. But really, this is the first time this has been seen. Now, I have a paper here with some of the most exciting news that you've heard yet. When are our Martha Pullen schools for 1997? And by the way, our February school is in the Back to School and the Christmas issue, the school brochure of So Beautiful magazine. February 10th through 16th in Huntsville, Alabama, June 17th through 22nd in Arlington, Texas. We're taking the whole school out to Texas, July 21st through 27th in Huntsville, Alabama. We have, of course, our new books are Silk Ribbon Treasures. We are pleased to be writing a book, Heirloom Doll Clothes for the Getz Doll Company. That's the same company in Germany that makes a very popular 18-inch doll. We have our Program Guide 500, which will be ready in the fall of '96, Program Guide 600, which will be ready in the spring of '97, and a wonderful book called A Christmas to Remember, which will be ready December 1st, 1996. We have a host of new notions. The catalogs will be mailed late fall '96, the new catalogs, and if you didn't get one, please call us for a free catalog. And we are in the final stages, this is a big secret, but I'm going to tell you anyway, of having the Getz Doll Company out of Germany to do a limited edition doll called Joanna. She'll be a beautiful blue-eyed blonde dressed in a wonderful dress. The edition will be limited to 1,500 dolls, and that will be available fall of '96. Again, if you have not received the catalog, please just call our 1-800 number and get your catalog. And by the way, most of you know that we're on the internet now, so please visit us on the internet. And I just want you to know that we have a lot of wonderful products. I think we have the most wonderful staff in the world to help you when you call on the phone or when you write or when you send your orders on the internet. Once again, let me thank you for subscribing to So Beautiful magazine. You're very important to us, and we appreciate you. May God bless each and every one of you.